He was a billionaire who had it all, until he caught the maid doing something with his disabled son that changed everything. But what he did next, no one saw it coming. Stay with me, because this story will break your heart, rebuild your soul, and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, sacrifice, and what truly makes a family. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss any of our powerful, life-changing stories. Like and share this channel with others, because this is more than just storytelling. Each episode is crafted with purpose, carrying deep moral lessons that inspire, heal, and uplift. Join us on this journey of growth, reflection, and transformation. Billionaire catches Maid helping his disabled son feel normal again. What he did shocks everyone. I was not always this powerful. Not always this cold. There was a time when I would sit in the corner of a hospital room, holding my son's frail hand, asking God why. Why my boy? Why him? Joshua was born with cerebral palsy. Doctors said he might never walk, never speak clearly, never live like a normal child. His mother, Sophia, left when he was 3. Said she could not handle the burden. She packed her bags, left me a note, and vanished from our lives. That night, I cried on the cold marble floor of our mansion, while my son slept upstairs in silence. I had all the wealth in the world, but I could not buy hope. I could not buy my family back. Years passed. I built an empire. Steel, concrete, high-rises that touched the clouds. But inside, I was still a broken man. I stopped smiling, stopped believing. And Joshua? He sat in his chair by the window, watching life pass by. One afternoon, I came home earlier than usual. I was tired. A merger had gone south. A board member stabbed me in the back. It was one of those days where money felt like poison in my veins. As I walked through the hall, I heard music, laughter, Joshua's laughter. My heart nearly stopped. I walked quietly toward the sound, peered into the sunroom, and I froze. Joshua was in the middle of the room, on his feet, arms shaking, but dancing. He was laughing genuinely. And across from him was her, Elena, our maid. She held his hands, guided him gently. She wore no shoes, only socks and an apron dusted with flour. She looked at him the way a mother might, with fierce love and gentle pride. She did not notice me. Neither of them did. Joshua stumbled and laughed. Elena caught him before he fell. She whispered something. He nodded. I backed away, quiet, conflicted. The next morning, I called her into my study. She walked in nervously, eyes down. Elena, I said, I saw what you did yesterday. Her hands trembled. I saw fear. She thought I would fire her. But I was trembling too. Not with anger. With something else. Shame. Gratitude. I stood up, walked over, and said the words I had not said in years. Thank you. Tears welled up in her eyes. She confessed. She had been secretly helping Joshua at night, teaching him small exercises, letting him listen to music, cooking his favorite meals, reading him stories until he slept. She said, Sir, he just needed to be seen, not fixed. I looked away. Her words pierced deeper than any business loss ever had. That night, I sat beside Joshua, and for the first time in years, he rested his head on my shoulder. Elena became more than a maid after that. She became his therapist, his teacher, his light. And slowly, she became mine too. I started waking up early, not for meetings, but for breakfast with them. I started reading books, Not for investment strategies, but bedtime stories. I started seeing colors again, smiling again. One evening, as rain tapped against the glass windows, I found Elena sitting beside Joshua, brushing his hair with soft hands. He had fallen asleep. I asked her quietly, "Why are you doing this?" She looked at me, eyes filled with something stronger than pity. "Love," she whispered, "because I know what it feels like to be unwanted." And then she told me her story, what she had survived, what she had lost, what she had run from, and why she chose to stay. At that moment, I realized she had saved my son, but more than that, she had saved me. Everything changed after that night. But the world did not understand. And when the media found out what I did next, they were stunned. Because I offered Elena something I had never offered anyone. Not shares, not property, not a business partnership, but my heart. I proposed to her, not with a ring of diamonds, but with a small, trembling handwritten note I left on her pillow. It read, "You gave my son hope. You gave me life again. Will you give us forever?" She did not answer that night. She just stood at the foot of my bed, tears sliding silently down her cheeks, one hand over her heart, the other holding the note like it was made of gold. Then she turned and walked out. I waited, and every second of that night felt longer than the years I spent building my empire. At sunrise, I found her in the garden, Joshua on her lap, wrapped in a blanket, pointing at birds with his slow, clumsy fingers. Elena looked up at me. No words. She simply reached out, took my hand, and placed it over both of theirs. And that was her answer. We never told anyone for months. Not my board, not the press. But word travels. People talk. They did not see the love. They saw the scandal. A billionaire and a maid? She must have trapped him. Where is the prenup? They questioned her intentions, questioned my sanity. I was told to reconsider, that it would damage my reputation, shake shareholder confidence, lower stock prices. But none of them had seen my son smile. None of them had watched him take 3 unsteady steps toward Elena, arms outstretched like he was flying. So I stood before my board, my advisors, my empire, and I said, I built all of this on numbers. Now I am building my life on something greater. Then I resigned as CEO, handed the reins to my most trusted partner, and walked away from the podium. Gasps, flashes, headlines. But in my heart, for the first time in decades, there was peace. I came home that night to the sound of humming. Elena was cooking. Joshua was drawing. And I stood there barefoot, in a t-shirt, holding a wooden spoon and laughing like a fool. I had never felt richer. But life, as always, was not done testing us. 3 weeks later, Elena collapsed in the kitchen. The doctor's voice was grim, his words cold, like someone reading a report, not breaking a man's heart. Stage 3. We found it too late. I remember grabbing the edge of the table to stay upright. Joshua, sensing something was wrong, just kept asking, "Where is Mama? Why is Papa crying?" And in that moment, everything that had once mattered, the companies, the money, the public perception, faded like smoke. I sat beside her hospital bed that night, her hand in mine, her eyes weak, but still holding that same light. "I am not afraid," she whispered. "I just want him to remember me, happy." And so I did what I had never done before. I prayed. Not for a deal. Not for wealth. But for time. Time to love her louder. Time to show her what she had given us. Time to save the woman who had saved everything. And what happened next shocked the world all over again. I flew her to Switzerland that same week. Private jet. No hesitation. Every doctor I could find, oncologists, specialists, researchers, was called. I did not care about the cost. I would have traded every building with my name on it, just to buy her another year. But money does not heal cells. And science does not bend for love. Still, she smiled. Even through the pain. You are trying to move mountains, she whispered one evening, as snow fell softly outside the window. And yet I would have stayed with you, even if you had only been a man sweeping streets. I wept quietly, and she wiped my tears. Every night, I sat beside her with Joshua on my lap. He would hum songs she used to sing in the kitchen. He did not understand everything, but he felt it. Love speaks a language even the broken can understand. One day, Elena asked for a piece of paper and a pen. Her hands shook as she wrote. It took her an hour. When she finished, she folded the note and handed it to me. Do not read this until you need it most, she said. Not before. I tucked it in my jacket pocket, next to my heart, and I have never opened it. Not yet. Because, somehow, Elena started to get better. The doctors were confused. Scans showed unexpected progress. Her body was fighting harder than anyone predicted. They called it a medical anomaly. I called it grace. The quiet, persistent kind that grows in people who love without limits. She began to walk again, cook again, sing again. And one summer evening, with the garden in bloom, and Joshua chasing fireflies with his brace unstrapped, I married her. In our backyard, under a canopy of white lights. Only a few guests. No media. Just us. She wore a dress she had sewn herself. Simple. Elegant. Her hair pinned up with a clip Joshua had picked. As I looked at her, hand in hand, I realized this was the richest moment of my life. But life is not a fairy tale. 3 months later, a letter arrived. From my ex-wife, Sophia. She had seen us in the news. Heard whispers through old social circles. She wanted to meet Joshua again. She said she had changed. That she regretted everything. And something about the tone of her message did not sit right with me. But Elena? She surprised me once more. She said, maybe Joshua needs to know her, even if it hurts. And so I agreed. We arranged a meeting. In a neutral place. A quiet cafe by the lake. I held Joshua's hand the entire way. Elena's too. As we waited at the table, watching the water shimmer in the late autumn sun, I felt my heart race. Not from fear, but from the sense that something was about to change. And then, we saw her, Sophia, walking toward us, in heels and regret, wearing a polished smile that looked practiced. She reached for Joshua, but he hesitated. And that was when everything I feared began to unfold. Joshua pulled his hand back, gently, but with certainty. He looked up at Elena, eyes wide searching, and leaned into her side. Not Sophia's outstretched arms. Sophia froze. Her smile cracked for a moment, then quickly returned, too bright, too rehearsed. Oh, darling, she said, forcing laughter, as if she could pretend away the years. Do you remember, Mommy? Joshua said nothing. He turned toward me instead and signed something with his fingers. Elena translated softly. He asked why this woman smells like strangers. Sophia's face paled. She sat down, flustered, crossed her legs, uncrossed them again, looked at Elena, then at me. "So," she said tightly, "you married the maid?" I saw Elena flinch. Just barely. But it was there. Before I could speak, Elena reached across the table, her voice calm as lake water. "I was the maid," she said. "But now I am his mother. Not by blood. By choice." Sophia scoffed. "Do you think love is enough?" She looked at me, bitterness rising. "You think this fairy tale will last?" I stood then, not out of anger, but with quiet clarity. "I used to think power was everything," I told her. Then I watched a woman with no wealth, no title, no obligation, heal the pieces you left behind. I turned to Joshua. He was holding Elena's hand now, fingers intertwined. Safe. She gave him back his childhood, and gave me back my soul. Sophia's eyes welled with something. Anger? Regret? Envy? She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the table. "This is why I came," she said. I stared at the envelope, felt my pulse pound. My breath grew tight. Elena's fingers touched my wrist, anchored me. I opened it slowly. Inside, a custody petition, signed, filed, stamped by the court. Sophia was suing for parental rights. And in that single moment, the world I had rebuilt with tenderness and sacrifice shook beneath my feet. Joshua looked up, confused. He did not understand the papers, but he felt the energy shift. He squeezed Elena's hand tighter. Sophia stood, grabbed her purse, turned away. Before walking off, she glanced back. With a voice colder than winter wind, she said, "This is not over." Then she disappeared, and I stood there, holding a document that could rip our family apart. Elena remained seated, eyes down, silent. Joshua leaned against her, softly humming the lullaby she always sang to him, unaware of the storm gathering above us. I sat back down, took both their hands in mine, and whispered the only promise I knew I could keep. "We fight. Together." But what came next, none of us were ready for. 3 days later, we stood before the judge. A courtroom not built for love, but for facts. Cold, sharp, unforgiving. Sophia arrived with a lawyer in a $1,000 suit. Slick, confident. He smiled too easily, like someone who had won cases just by twisting words. We had no army of attorneys, just one woman, Elena, and a heart full of truth. She wore a plain dress, no makeup, her hair pulled back neatly, but she held her head high. I had seen her cry in silence. I had seen her laugh through pain. But that day, she looked unshakable. Sophia took the stand first. Tears flowed, but they felt rehearsed. She spoke of regret, of healing, of therapy, of wanting to reconnect with her son. She said Elena had no legal right, that Joshua deserved his real mother. The room was quiet, still. When it was our turn, Elena asked to speak. Not me, her. The judge looked skeptical, but nodded. She stood slowly, walked to the center, hands trembling slightly, but voice steady. "I was not there when Joshua was born," she began. "I was not there when he took his first breath, or when his mother left. She looked toward Sophia briefly, not with anger, but with sorrow. I came later, when his world was already quiet, and his father had forgotten how to smile. The courtroom leaned in. I did not carry him in my womb, but I have carried his weight every day, in my arms, on my back, in my soul. Her voice cracked, but she continued. I have watched him cry in the dark, afraid to speak, afraid to be seen, and I have sat beside him until he slept, so he would never feel alone again. She turned to the judge. Biology is not what saved Joshua. Love did. She stepped down, and silence filled the room like thunder. The judge looked at me. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Carter? I shook my head. There was nothing more powerful than what had just been said. The judge called a recess, 30 minutes, to review the documents and testimony. We waited in the hallway. Elena sat beside Joshua. He was drawing something on her palm with his finger. She smiled, eyes glassy. Sophia was pacing, tapping her nails. Her lawyer on the phone. Then suddenly, he looked up, eyes narrowed, and approached us. He held out a folder. Expression unreadable. This changes things, he said quietly. Inside were medical documents, DNA tests, timelines. Something was wrong. Something did not make sense. Elena opened the papers. Read slowly, then gasped. And I felt the blood drain from my face. Because what we found in those pages would change everything we thought we knew about Joshua and about Sophia's past. The words on the page blurred in my vision, but one sentence burned itself into my mind. Patient's maternal DNA is inconclusive for maternity. I read it again, and again. It made no sense. Sophia was his mother. She had given birth to him, had walked away from him. Had she not? Elena stared at me, her lips parted, the folder trembling in her hands. Joshua sat between us, quiet now, sensing something had shifted. Sophia stood several steps away, still speaking with her lawyer, but her voice had changed, lower, tense. I walked toward her. What is this? I asked, holding the papers up like a burning match. She stopped speaking, looked at the file, and for a single heartbeat, her mask fell. Then she recovered, shrugged. They must have made a mistake, she said too quickly. I carried that child. I gave birth to him. Her voice rose, defensive, desperate. But something inside me was unraveling, a thread of doubt pulling at a hidden truth, one I had never dared question. I turned back to Elena. She held Joshua now. He had climbed into her lap, his face pressed into her chest. She looked at me, not with suspicion, but quiet resolve. We need answers, she said. The judge returned moments later. We handed over the documents. He paused the hearing, ordered immediate verification from the hospital records. Within 48 hours, we had them, and what they revealed shook the foundation of everything I had believed. Sophia had never given birth. Not to Joshua, not to any child. She had adopted him at birth, quietly, privately, through an unregistered midwife service. The reason? She had told me she was pregnant, but the pregnancy had ended in miscarriage. She had hidden it from me, then adopted Joshua as a way to fix us, to pretend nothing had been lost. And when she realized he was not perfect, she walked away, not just from a child, but from a lie she had crafted. and could no longer maintain. I sat on the edge of our bed that night, holding the adoption papers. Elena sat beside me, silent. How could I not know? I asked, my voice hollow. You loved him too much to see the cracks, she whispered. And he loved you too much to ever question where he came from. Joshua was ours. Not by blood, not by mistake, but by something stronger. Choice. The court reconvened 2 days later. Sophia's petition was dismissed. Her deception laid bare. Her silence in the courtroom, deafening. As she walked past us for the last time, she did not speak. She did not look back. And Joshua, watching her silhouette disappear through the glass doors, simply whispered, "She was never my mama." Elena pulled him into her arms, tears streaming down her face. That night, as we lay together, watching our son sleep peacefully between us, I reached into the drawer and pulled out the note she had written me in the hospital, the one I had never opened. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. The paper was creased, the ink slightly smudged, but her words were still clear. If one day I am not beside you, please remember, I never came to save you. I came to remind you that you were never lost. And beneath that, in smaller handwriting, you saved yourself the moment you chose to love without fear. I held the paper to my chest, then looked at her, the woman who had rebuilt my life, with quiet strength and unshakable love. But just as I was about to speak, her phone rang. She answered. Her face changed, and I knew something was wrong. The voice on the other end said 4 words that would turn our world upside down. Once again. It is about Joshua's birth mother. Elena's face went pale. She ended the call slowly. Her hands trembled in her lap. I leaned in. What is it? I asked. Her voice was soft, measured. They found her, she said. Joshua's biological mother. She's alive. For a moment, the room fell silent. All I could hear was the ticking of the old clock on the mantel, and my own heart beating, hard and uncertain. I looked over at Joshua, who was playing with wooden blocks on the carpet, humming that same lullaby Elena always sang to him. I knelt beside her. What does she want? Elena looked at me with eyes that had seen enough pain to break 1,000 hearts, but still chose grace. She wants to meet him, not to take him, just to meet him, to apologize. I closed my eyes. So many years, so many truths twisted and buried, so many battles fought over pieces of a child that no one fought hard enough to truly understand. And now, a woman who had vanished from his life at birth wanted a moment. I looked at Elena, then at Joshua, then back at the journey we had walked. Let her, I said. She deserves a chance to see what love really looks like. And so we met her. She was not what I expected. Not broken, not bitter, just human. Her story was layered with pain, poverty, fear. She had given Joshua up so he would have a better life. And when she learned he had been abandoned again, she spent years searching in silence, ashamed of the life she had led, unworthy of coming forward. Elena held her hand and forgave her, just like that, because forgiveness, I learned, was not about excusing the pain. It was about releasing it, so it would not control the story anymore. Joshua smiled at her, called her friend, and went back to playing. No anger, no confusion, just the innocence of a child who had always been loved, in one way or another. That night, as we tucked him in, Elena asked me, "Do you think he will ever know how many lives his little heart has healed?" I smiled. No. And that is the beauty of it. The moral of the story. This journey began with loss, betrayal, and isolation. But it became a story of redemption, of second chances, of how love, real love, is not bound by biology, wealth, or perfection. Love is shown in who stays, in who believes, in who holds you when the world lets go. Elena, once a maid, became the soul of our family. Joshua, once discarded, became the bridge that brought broken hearts together. And I, once a man of power with an empty heart, learned that true success is not in what you build, but in who you build it with. If you have ever felt unwanted, unseen, unworthy, remember this: you are never too broken to be loved, and you are never too late to start loving back. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and let someone know. You are never alone.